Okay, so you know how we're always talking about keeping an eye on the big players?
Right.
Well, check this out. Names like BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, they're all making some serious moves with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and it's
Extra.
interesting. Yeah, this is a I mean, this isn't just some like, tech trend anymore,
Yeah.
This is like we're talking a seismic shift in the entire financial landscape. And like it or not,
Yeah.
this impacts everyone, right? So that's kind of what we're going to dig into today.
Yeah, why this is happening and what it might mean for your own investments.
Yeah, you know what I think is so fascinating about this? This is like a huge change in how like the financial old guard views Bitcoin, right?
Hmm.
Because for years, I mean, it was like the Wild West out there, right?
Right.
Total speculation. But when you have these institutions with like the clout and the reputation of BlackRock, they start incorporating Bitcoin into their own strategies.
Mm-hmm.
It changes the game. Like they're saying, okay,
Right.
this is a legitimate asset now.
Yeah. It's like the Wild West just got its first paved road or something. It's a
Yeah.
big deal. But does that mean that Bitcoin is about to become like the next stock market darling?
Right.
Should we be worried about like missing out?
It's a good question. It's important to remember that these institutional investors, they're not in it for a quick buck, They play the long game.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like the rise of all the big tech companies, right?
Yeah.
Like back in the dot-com bubble. Institutions, they weren't buying up Amazon at its peak back then. They were like strategically investing as the full potential of the internet became clear and they were holding for the long term.
Right.
So this suggests that they're seeing, maybe a similar long-term potential with Bitcoin,
Which,
which could lead to more stable growth compared to the volatility that it's been known for, right?
so we're not necessarily talking about, get rich quick schemes here.
No, not at all. This is more like it's suggesting Bitcoin is becoming more of a strategic asset that you would integrate into like a diversified portfolio for its unique properties.
So instead of thinking of it like a wild horse, it's more like this powerful new breed being added to the stable.
Exactly.
Okay. So Bitcoin, long-term strategy, maybe a bit less of the roller coaster ride that we've seen in the past, but let's get down to brass tacks here. You know, the world feels a little shaky right now.
It does.
Inflation is eating away at everyone's savings.
Yeah.
Geopolitical uncertainty, it's making people nervous. Where does Bitcoin even fit into all of this?
Well, and that's kind of where this whole idea of Bitcoin being a hedge comes in, right?
Okay.
It's a hedge against like all this economic uncertainty.
Right.
Because think about it, with like government issued currencies, they can print more whenever they want, right?
Yeah.
So what happens? It loses its value,
Mhm.
Inflation eats away at it.
Mhm.
But Bitcoin, it's different. It's got that fixed supply.
Right.
21 million coins. That's it. That's all there ever will be.
So you're holding on to something finite. Like it can't just be like printed out of thin air.
Exactly. And that's a big part of the appeal for a lot of investors. They're looking for assets that can hold their value, especially when like, everything else feels so unpredictable.
So almost like digital gold.
That's a really good analogy, actually. I mean, obviously any investment is going to come with some kind of risk, right?
Right.
But that limited supply of Bitcoin, that's one of the big things driving this whole idea of it being a safe haven asset.
Okay, so it's like when the times get tough, you want to have a little bit of that digital gold stashed away,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We're not saying like go put all your money in Bitcoin, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
This is where that idea of diversification comes in. This is something I think a lot of people listening are going to be like really interested in.
Diversification is like, it's investing 101 for a reason, right?
Right.
You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm.
And that's what makes Bitcoin so interesting is that historically, it hasn't really moved in the same way as the stock market.
So like when the stock market takes a dip, Bitcoin might actually, what, vig when everything else is zagging?
Exactly. It can be like its own thing.
Which could be really good for like smoothing out the bumps in your portfolio.
Right. And there's data to support this. I mean,
Mm.
studies have shown that even just a small amount of Bitcoin, like 1 to 5% of your portfolio,
Oh, yeah?
has actually historically like improved how some portfolios have performed overall.
Interesting.
It's not about replacing everything else.
Right.
It's about adding this asset that has like a totally different risk profile that could
Yeah.
actually make your returns even better.
Okay. So we've covered a lot. We talked about like these big institutions getting involved, the potential of Bitcoin as a hedge, why diversification is so important. But I think we kind of have to address the elephant in the room here,
Yeah.
which is the volatility of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a roller coaster, and that makes people nervous, right?
Totally. And it's a valid concern. It's definitely had its ups and downs. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
But I think this is where the fact that these big institutions are getting involved is even more interesting.
Okay.
Because remember, these aren't just like, day traders.
Right.
These institutions, they're thinking long term. They've got way more money to play with. Short term ups and downs, they don't really phase them as much.
So they're not going to be like freaking out and selling off all their Bitcoin if the price dips for a little bit.
Exactly.
So are you saying that they might actually help make the market more stable?
It's possible.
It's like, in your, imagine a seesaw, right?
Right.
And it's like a couple of kids on it, they're making it go up and down like crazy.
Yeah.
But then you get like a couple of, sumo wrestlers to get on either end.
Right.
It's going to be a much smoother ride.
I like that analogy. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. So basically, this influx of all this institutional money, it could lead to prices moving up more gradually over time. Now, look, it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
And like we said, volatility is kind of, built into Bitcoin's DNA. But this could be a stabilizing force in the long run.
So, big question then.
Mm-hmm.
What does this all actually mean for the price of Bitcoin in the future? Everyone wants to know, like, is it really going to reach the moon?
I wish I had a crystal ball.
Right.
Nobody knows for sure. And remember, just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it'll happen again. But you've got this asset with a limited supply, and you've got this growing demand. And a lot of that demand is coming from players with a ton of money. So that creates a very interesting dynamic.
Okay, so we're not in the business of giving financial advice here. We just want to give you the information so you can make your own decisions.
Yeah.
But, I mean, realistically, this is probably where some people might be getting a little nervous, right? Like, okay, this all sounds good, but what about the risks? And what about regulation? Is any of this even legal?
Yeah, I mean, those are really important questions. Let's start with the risk part. The thing is, every investment has some level of risk.
Right.
The key is to manage it. So with Bitcoin, starting small, maybe like putting in 1% to 3% of your portfolio, it's a way to dip your toes in without going all in.
Yeah, like test the waters a bit.
Exactly. And on the regulation side, things are definitely changing. Governments around the world, they're all trying to figure out how to handle Bitcoin and other digital assets. And that's actually attracting even more of these institutional players because they want that clarity. It makes them feel more secure.
So it's not the Wild West that it used to be.
It's getting there. We're also seeing these like institutional grade custodians popping up. Basically, they're like platforms specifically for storing large amounts of Bitcoin super securely, which is something those big investors really need.
So it sounds like things are moving in a direction that could make Bitcoin more like approachable,
Yeah, potential.
less intimidating for both individual investors and these big institutions. But I mean, with all this talk about the future and what could be, it's really easy to get caught up in the hype. How do we even cut through all the noise? Like, how can people listening make, smart decisions about Bitcoin? That's the thing, isn't it?
Right.
It's exciting, but you got to be smart about it too.
It really is. And, Bitcoin, it could be a really valuable part of a diversified portfolio, but it's not like some magic, get rich quick scheme or something.
Right.
It's more about like really understanding the fundamentals, figuring out your own risk tolerance, and then making decisions based on that, decisions that make sense for you and your financial goals.
We've definitely thrown a lot of information at everyone today.
We have.
Institutional adoption, hedging against all the uncertainty in the world, diversification, volatility. And then we even touched on the whole regulatory landscape, which is always changing.
It's a lot to digest.
It really is.
But I think if there's like one big takeaway from everything we've talked about today, it's that Bitcoin is at kind of a turning point.
Okay.
It's like going from this niche thing that people were, I don't know, a little bit scared of maybe or didn't understand to like potentially a more established part of, how people think about finance. And these big institutions, they're a huge part of making that happen.
So it's bigger than just should I buy Bitcoin today? It's like this whole fundamental shift.
Exactly. And honestly, the best thing anyone can do is just keep learning.
Yeah.
This is just like scratching the surface. This whole world is so complex and it's changing constantly.
We've given everyone the map and the compass.
Exactly. Now it's time to get out there and explore.
Love that.
And don't be afraid to, like really dive in. There's some great resources out there, CoinDesk, The Block, even just talking to a financial advisor who knows about digital assets.
Right. Someone who really gets it.
Yes. The more you know, the better equipped you'll be to actually, navigate this whole exciting world of, new finance.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because it is exciting.
Yeah.
It's like watching the world of finance change right in front of our eyes.
It really is.
And we can all be a part of it. So yeah, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.